Hey everyone, and welcome to Adult Storytime, Storytime for adults. I'm your host, Katie from Adult Services, and today is our fourth and final November Storytime on the theme of National Native American Heritage Month. Now, this is a theme we could go with all year, but November is National Native American Heritage Month, so we're celebrating it accordingly and honoring it accordingly. But please, if any of the past three and this story time included story times have piqued your interest or pushed you to realize that there's more for you to learn, which there always is, you know, don't just leave it to November. And with that, I wanted to share something today that was written by Sean Sherman for Time magazine. Originally published November 19th, 2018, so it's about 2 years old. But Sean is the founder and CEO of The Sioux Chef and the author of The Sioux Chef's Indigenous Kitchen, which won the 2018 James Beard Award for Best American Cookbook. Now, this is a cookbook we all definitely need to check out. So see what you can do to find some of his recipes. I mean, if you want some classic Native American food for your Thanksgiving table or your anytime table, start here. So I wanted to read this op-ed piece that Sean wrote entitled, "The Thanksgiving Tale We Tell is a Harmful Lie. As a Native American, I found a better way to celebrate the holiday." And I thought we could all learn from and embrace his words today. So here we go. This is the words of Sean Sherman, the Sioux Chef. Every November, I get asked an unfortunate, loaded question. You're a Native American. What do you eat on Thanksgiving? My answer spans my lifetime. I was born and raised on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota in the 1970s. And am a member of the Oglala Lakota Sioux tribe. Growing up, I went to a very small country school on the reservation in the poorest county in the United States. Our school had predominantly Native students, but we were still taught what everybody was about Thanksgiving. It represented a time when Pilgrims and Indians celebrated together, and it was about being thankful. Only later would we find out that it was a lie. But as I was taught this story, my family gathered on Thanksgiving at my grandparents' ranch, where we held a huge feast of very typical recipes, most of them straight out of a circa 60s Betty Crocker cookbook. I remember the mingling smells of dishes cooking throughout the day as our moms and aunts crowded every kitchen surface preparing for the large offering. We had the staples like roasted turkey, mashed potatoes and milk gravy, sweet potatoes with marshmallows, green bean casserole with onion crisps, brand name stuffing, canned cranberry sauce, an assortment of cold pasta salads, jello molds, cookies, deviled eggs, and 1950s style glass platters filled with canned California black olives, pickles, and piles of veggies. On occasion, we had Lakota dishes like daniga, intestine soup, and wojapi, choke cherry sauce. Those are good memories. Though once my grandparents passed away, my family never celebrated holidays like that again, gathered in one place on the reservation. In the years since, my perspective on Thanksgiving has changed. At first from a sense of bitterness surrounding the real history of those lies we tell, of the actual stories we should honor and mourn, and then with a renewed hope for what our celebrations could be if we simply changed our focus. It was the Wampanoag in 1621 who helped the first wave of Puritans arriving on our shores, showing them how to plant crops, forage for wild foods, and basically survive. The first official mention of a Thanksgiving celebration occurs in 1637, after the colonists brutally massacre an entire Pequot village, then subsequently celebrate their barbaric victory. Years later, President Washington first tried to start a holiday of Thanksgiving in 1789, but this has nothing to do with Indians and settlers. Instead, it's intended to be a public day of thanksgiving and prayer. That the phrase merciless, savage Indians is written into the Declaration of Independence says everything we need to know about how the founders of America viewed the indigenous peoples of this land. It wasn't until the writer Sarah Josefa Hale persuaded President Lincoln that the Thanksgiving holiday was needed and could help heal the divided nation that it was made official in 1863. But even that was not the story we are all taught today. The inspiration for that was far more exclusionist. We know less about the first Thanksgiving than you probably think. According to the 2009 book, Thanksgiving, The Biography of an American Holiday by James Baker, who was a researcher at Plymouth Plantation, this changed during the Progressive Era, 1890 through 1920, when the United States became a global power rife with industrialization and urbanization. It saw a rise in nationalism as European immigrants poured into the country and the Protestant Americans who'd massacred indigenous people feared being displaced. Colonial ideology became the identity of what it was to be truly American, and they began implementing teachings to clearly define Americanism for the new immigrants. One of these was the sanitized story of Thanksgiving, which fabricated a peaceful depiction between the colonizers and the tribes, and neglected to mention the amount of death, destruction, and land grabbing that occurs against the First Peoples, setting the tone for the next 200 years. By 1920, writes Baker, the story of Pilgrims and Indians became a story every American schoolchild was taught, even in native schools. But our families lived something different. My great-grandfather helped fight off General Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn, alongside other Lakota and Cheyenne, not even 100 years before my birth. I think about my great-grandfather's lifetime, being born in the 1850s. Toward the end of the genocides that began in the 1600s across America, and stretching into the subtler but still damaging years of assimilation efforts that we have endured since. He saw escalating conflicts between Lakota life as he knew it and the ever-emerging immigrants from the East. He witnessed the disappearance of the bison, the loss of the sacred Black Hills, the many broken promises made by the U.S., along with atrocities like the Sand Creek and Wounded Knee massacres. He saw his children attend the boarding schools where they had their hair forcibly cut and were punished for speaking their languages. I wonder what he thought about the Thanksgiving story. But I do not wonder about this. Thanksgiving really has nothing to do with Native Americans, and everything to do with an old, but not the oldest, guard, conjuring a lie of the First Peoples, welcoming the settlers to bolster their false authority over what makes a real American. Remember, only in 1924 were Native Americans allowed to become citizens of the United States, and it took decades more for all states to permit us to vote. It is a story of supposed unity, drained of the bloodshed and built for the sake of division. Many of my indigenous brothers and sisters refuse to celebrate Thanksgiving, protesting the whitewashing of the horrors our ancestors went through, and I don't blame them. But I have not abandoned the holiday. I have just changed how I practice it. The thing is, we do not need the poisonous Pilgrims and Indians narrative. We do not need that illusion of past unity to actually unite people today. Instead, we can focus simply on the values that apply to everybody: togetherness, generosity, and gratitude. And we can make the day about what everybody wants to talk and think about anyway: the food. People may not realize it, but what every person in this country shares, and the very history of this nation, has been in front of us the whole time. Most of our Thanksgiving recipes are made with indigenous foods: turkey, corn, beans, pumpkins, maple, wild rice, and the like. We should embrace this. For years, especially as the head of a company that focuses on indigenous foods, I have explored native foods. It has given me, and can give all of us, a deeper understanding of the land we stand on. It's exciting to reconnect with the nature around us. We Americans spend hours outdoors collecting foods like chanterelles, morels, ramps, wild ginger, choke cherries, wild plums, crab apples, cactus fruit, pawpaws, manzanita berries, cattails, maple, wild rice, not the stuff from California, which is a modified and completely different version of the true wild rice growing around the Great Lakes region, the cedar, rose hips, hickory, acorns, and walnuts. We can work with native growers producing heirloom beans, squash, and pumpkins, and native corn varieties, all coming in many shapes, sizes, and colors. We can have our feasts include dishes like cedar braised rabbit, sunchokes with sumac, pine stewed venison, smoked turkey with chestnuts, true wild rice with foraged mushrooms, native squash with maple, smoked salmon, and wild teas. No matter where you are in North America, you are on indigenous land. And so on this holiday, and any day really, I urge people to explore a deeper connection to what are called American foods by understanding true Native American histories and begin using what grows naturally around us and to support Native American growers. There is no need to make Thanksgiving about a false past. It is so much better when it celebrates the beauty of the present. Now, like I said, that was originally published in Time magazine in 2018. I think here in this year 2020, it might even be more relevant today than it was then. Obviously, it wasn't that long ago, but I think Sean Sherman said it really beautifully, and it's a message I think we should all try and hold in our hearts this Thanksgiving and beyond. So with that, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you enjoyed our November Storytime series as much as I did. And stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will hopefully see you soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.